So I guess this is official, call it to order.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Got a form.
Do we have an agenda or we just?
I think we were just gonna go for it, but
Diving
I'll give us a little introduction just for formality's sake. My name's Monica Powell, I work with Kinley Horn. I've met a few of you guys throughout this process, but in case you haven't met me yet, I'm the urban planner on this project. I work with Jeff Whitaker, so if you know him, I'm usually the person behind the scenes with that. So, you know, just to kind of recap everyone, we've been working through the development of this report for the last about month and a half, following the charrette that we had in September, and we gathered a lot of really good feedback from that. We're building also off of a public survey that we had on a project website, Social Pinpoint, and so we're combining that feedback along with things that we heard at the charrette and came together with this report. We were at the last TIRZ meeting. Gave you guys all a copy. It looks like you either have the copy from that or the city was able to provide one from the copy we sent digitally. So the purpose of this meeting is to just kind of go through preliminary comments that you guys might have had on the report, and our goal is to take the feedback heard from today and kind of gather a consensus in case maybe there's differing opinions on some recommendations. Downtown is a really important area, so we want to make sure that we're targeting the right actions. And so we'll take the feedback from this meeting today, and our plan is to get an updated report from those comments after the holidays, with the plan to have a final report and a celebration/launch event in February. So right now we're basically past the first draft in the revision phase. So I am going to pull up a digital copy, and my plan is to take notes on this PDF with kind of whatever our leading strategies are for these recommendations, and just facilitate discussion. So this is going to be largely, I think, kind of going through, if you go section by section, and if people had you know, things they wanted to discuss, feel free to call them out. And yeah, that's what we've got for today, and I believe we've got about an hour set aside. So
we have the time, the pleasure of the board as well for discussion.
yes, thank you to the board as well for being here.
And Monica, if I may, I
Yes.
wanted to also let the board be aware that city staff has also reviewed this plan
Yes.
as well. We've had our Parks Department, our Public Works folks, City Manager's Office reviewed as well, and we've made comments and forwarded those over to Kinley Horn. So as we go through the plan, I can let the board know some of the comments that the city staff had. You know, one of the issues that we wanted to make sure that we addressed is that as it relates to parks, green spaces, that nothing in this plan would contradict our Parks Master Plan that is about to be released to council. So we made sure that was taken care of. But I think really the meat of the comments that the city staff had were, we have I guess a skeleton of what we're looking at building here, but we wanted to add meat to that as far as strategies for, you'll see items in here such as residential development in downtown, and that's great, but we wanted those strategies of how we get there, and so Kinley Horn is assisting us on those type of issues. But as we run into those issues, I'll definitely let the board know where staff is going to comment on those.
Perfect, thanks.
Since all the action items are kind of wrapped up under that implementation, do we want to
You want to start there, maybe?
go through that as a list, and then, I mean, are there things in here that warrant discussion? Was anybody, because I know all my notes are in the action items. When you
It might be a good way to facilitate the discussion if there were specific actions, and then if we needed to go back into a section, we can always go to where that is referenced initially in the report. Does that sound like a good plan?
I'll start on page 5 with what I've
Okay.
got. And I know it'll work its way to the actions, but it may be easier because of the graphics to look at that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So a lot of it has to do with the renderings.
Absolutely.
So the first thing that came to my mind, you know, was on the branding. It says we're going to build off the branding effort already established by Downtown Inc.
Yes.
And and I'm not on Downtown Inc., so I guess that may be well established, but what is that branding?
So I guess what we were referring to in that case was there is an online identity kind of, you know, with social media. We've got a logo, kind of some branding. There's, I believe like a banner image we have somewhere
It's
in
eat,
the
play, shop,
chapter.
stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically that kind of
And
initiative.
kind of that branding for the downtown also, eat, shop, stay,
Yeah,
play.
like what we
Can
have
you-
on a
can you go
t-shirt.
back a
Go to
screen?
4.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I believe it's on the previous,
Yeah, that's right.
That.
Yeah.
this here. So this logo, that kind of branding that's been established with that already, we don't feel there's a need to change that at all, just to build on top of it. So basically just acknowledging that there is already a branding initiative in place, and so we wanna try to, utilize that logo where we can and increase exposure so people can recognize that more as like a downtown entity.
Just a couple comments I have
Sure.
on this before we move on. I like the logo and wear that t-shirt a couple
Yeah.
times a month.
Excellent.
But I go back to when, like Odessa Industrial Development Corporation for years had this perception problem because they went by an acronym, one, OIDC. And 10 years ago, it's more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we basically, DBA'd it as Grow Odessa. And it's probably taken 12 years for 80% of the people to start calling it Grow Odessa, but at the end of the day, a lot of people still call it OIDC.
Right.
And the reason I think that's important is because the same thing happens here. And I think like our downtown Odessa, just the organization itself is called DOI, right? And then we say downtown Odessa. I mean, so why wouldn't we either call the organization the same as, just so it represents that, or, and these ideas aren't original to me. I just heard people say things and I stole their ideas, but I've heard the acronym DTO, mentioned for downtown Odessa. And that's playing off of like, ATAX or
Just like
SoCo
general
or,
colloquial,
something.
yeah.
Midland's now done, what's their Solo, South Lorraine Street, and that's how it's branded, and you go around and you see all the branding, so, and I'm just thinking in terms of, it's easy to put on a cap, it's easy to put on a shirt, I mean, but I like what we've got too, don't get me wrong, I'm just saying, it's kind of the time to, if we're gonna brand, let's, brand it, and then, and one other thing I think, like Midland's sort of trying to change their image somewhat. I mean, they've been the tall city for as long as I've known, and Odessa was the oil capital of the world. Well, that's not quite as in vogue as it used to be, I heard someone say the other day, that we cool call it O-Town.
Yeah, so I think that there's kind of two parts to that. There's how residents refer to the area of downtown, whether it's downtown Odessa or DTO. But then on top of that, Downtown Odessa Inc. being kind of an agency that oversees parts of the downtown, but is still a separate entity. I could see it being Downtown Odessa versus DOI referring to.
Are
Yes.
you looking at this from a separation of the organization from the area?
Not necessarily, what I'm looking at, Michael, is when it gets in print
That's it.
here, and then, it becomes, it just starts setting it, and I just want to be sure that once that's done, that everybody thought through that. I mean, I'm not, these are just suggestions, making sure we have thought through that, because, I mean, I'd rather see, us have an acronym like DTO than DOI, because to me, I don't associate what is DOI.
DOI.
Yeah, DOI. I mean, I don't get to how we got to that acronym,
It's
when it's
downtown Odessa
downtown
Inc.
Odessa. You're
Yeah,
right,
it's
but
the- it's the
what the
entity.
common person Odessa,
They don't, because I know in conversations I have, I'll drop DOI and they'll look at me like, what's DOI?
Yeah, I mean,
Downtown Odessa.
and I don't know that anybody in Odessa would ever say, hey, let's go to DTO. I mean, but I'm sure, somewhere along the line, everything that got branded, someone, it had to start somewhere, and it may be a decade before that ever happened, but I just want to be sure.
The branding on DOI was more, and people typically, they'll stop at downtown Odessa. They won't
They
include.
don't say
the-
the
Yeah,
But when we started at branding, and this little logo, if you remember, it was Gloria that
Yeah.
came up with that. We didn't necessarily incorporate a lot of the I port of that,
mhm.
and people just kind of refer to it as DTO. So maybe it is time to kind of take that in, John, and look at it, whether or not there needs to be
Well, I like that because, if you go to Austin, The T is missing, so you're the one that stands there and makes the T in the picture.
Yeah.
Or
So you-
Dallas the big.
It's ATEX, yeah, now.
And then-
they did
then-
that intentionally so people would
Yeah.
go in, yeah, same thing.
But then what's kind of cool about that is if you leave the T out, it's just do. Like, we've got to do, we've got to, we've got to go, like,
Yeah.
do something. So I like that.
That's really all I had on Brandy, just thought, just before we put it in print, or not put anything that it leaves it open, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the important thing is that whichever way we go, it needs to be consistent in all areas that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's, if it's downtown Odessa, and then you go here, so this is the A&E, Arts and Entertainment. Well, no, it's downtown Odessa, Arts and Entertainment section, something like that. So we need consistent over all things that are going on, because, like I said, if people know it's downtown Odessa, or it's DTO, they go, where's that? Where's downtown? So we just need to be consistent whichever way we go, because, the whole thing is getting people downtown Odessa, but yet they need to know where they're going and what they're going for. So I think it's whichever way we go, it just needs to be consistent over everything that we do.
I don't think we've tied ourselves up anywhere, because we've said like arts and cultural district and
Yeah.
stuff. So I mean, it just leaves it open, but I just thought it was it's an action item, it just needed to be talked about here, at the start.
And while we're on page 5,
Yeah.
one thing I'd like, this is old picture. I would like so many more old, new. So when the general public sees this, they're like, wow, they have done some stuff.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
That, I see so many old pictures, so let's keep the old Hector picture that looks rough, and look what we've done, here's a new one. I see several different things, maybe something mentioned about some businesses that have received facade grants. I'm not saying it's gonna be available forever, we hope it is, don't know if it is, but show me some old and new, show me some progress, because I think this is what we help hand out to different investors and different ones come in, and like,
Yeah.
what have y'all done?
Yeah.
Doesn't look like you've done anything, but show the lot where the conference center was, before and after, Torchy's before and after. Just some things where it shows some things, actions that we've taken care of that I'm missing in this. Because this, as a Realtor, this is one thing I pass out to clients. Hey,
Why invest in downtown?
yeah. And that's what too, because I want more businesses to come downtown. And you hear, well, y'all haven't done much. Well, yes, we've done this, and this. And I wouldn't even care if it was a J.C. Penney's lot that shows pennies and a vacant lot and maybe a rendering or something.
Yeah, but
what we want.
John, on that's, like, this is in here from the original one. That's the rendering of, here's what we're thinking in the
Yeah, for
overlay.
Grand Avenue.
What about when we do our kind of reveal, that we put the old plan, just one, overall view of the downtown, as opposed to what this one looks like, but the things that are already done could be like, I don't know, red or something, because quite frankly, the half of everything that was put into that plan is done.
Yeah.
A lot of it is done, and that's what I'd like to see, that we are moving forward.
Yeah,
that
people
we
are gonna
have
look at
stuff.
that in the public, especially, wow, look at what they rendered, just 5 years ago, look how much has happened in 5 years.
Well,
Now-
Toby, what I think about is the slideshow that Craig Van Amberg put together for the groundbreaking. And it showed a lot of the historical versus the next, and we could update that
Yeah.
with,
Yeah, it starts even further, because then you start having a legacy of what's happened in
Yeah.
Odessa, and it is a developing community, it's not stagnant or anything,
But I want to show progression, because
Yeah, I
we
agree
have
with
done quite a bit downtown.
Absolutely.
So typically these plans, and this is a question for you, Monica,
Yeah.
we updated this every five years, or we hope to update this every 5 years. As John said, we have a history of facade grants, new businesses that have gone up in downtown. Would it date our plan if we were to put in specifics that we've done $200,000 worth of facade grant, whatever it may be, the number is, how many facade grants we've done how many new businesses we put in downtown as of this plan. And I don't know, from a realtor standpoint, developer standpoint, that helps.
Yes.
If it's 5 years
Yes.
old and they're looking at it, well, they've only done this or that, but.
I could definitely see, so, but before we get into this first section, we do have kind of a recap of what is this project, how does it relate to the old plan, and what are we adding? And I could see us adding in a page or two that's not just talking about what is this project, but basically, what has happened since, between version 1 and version 2, and having numbers like that tracking the development and the facade grants and.
Maybe not necessarily in dollars, maybe we've done a total of 10 facade grants and 5 infrastructure grants, maybe not actually throw the dollars in, maybe just what
Well,
we've
I
done.
like the dollars. It
You like the
shows that
dollars?
we're willing to invest in the community.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
why not pat yourself on the back that ODC's put $1 million into downtown or however,
Millions.
Mr. Murrow, was there a threshold that ODC gave us for facade and infrastructure grants?
Yeah, I mean, each one of those has a limitation. So for example, facade is 25,000
Right.
with a 25%, with a $25,000 match. The infrastructure is 200,000, up to 200,000.
But is there a final number, and like the housing program, if there was 5 million, I believe, put
Yeah.
aside?
So that program is operated and existed under the understanding if there were more money needed,
Yes, sir.
ODC would consider adding more to that. So that's how we've historically, it's been around 7 years now, something like that. And so we've gotten to the point where we need more money, we simply go back to ODC for that.
Yes, sir.
Well, and even if there's a finish line, that, hey, we're 80% of the way. I don't see that, even that as a hindrance. But I like showing the investment, that, here's what we've done. I mean, the streets didn't pave themselves for free.
Yeah.
Resolve that.
Well, we definitely have the numbers of streetlights we've added, feet of roads we paved, infrastructure. that we've
So are
invested.
you thinking that we need to have a dollar investment since the last plan? I mean, because that's a pretty significant
I mean,
number. When you look at.
I
the
think
hotel-
I think it shows the investment of the
No,
city.
I don't disagree. I mean,
And in a quantifiable way that somebody can say, oh, wow, that's,
you know, when
Well,
we
the
look at
city's
the-
done X dollars and, private development's done things,
Yeah.
but it's direct correlation to the fact that the city supports it is what
Yeah.
Absolutely.
correlation you're
When-
trying to
when
draw.
you
The
think
city's
of-
spending money, but that's creating private development.
When you think of just the hotel conference center complex area, I mean, that's easily 85, 90 million right there. Yeah.
but even going out to show investors of, look, guys, we're willing to support this. If you want to come build your business here, we're gonna put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
I like that idea. I think if that's something that the city can
Yes, ma'am.
provide, those numbers, that would be
I
useful.
mean, especially since we've done so much.
Yeah, it's especially, I mean, when you talk about roadway improvements and things like that, that's the kind of stuff that it goes completely unnoticed. And people don't really realize
Right.
how much work it takes, to even just replace lights with pedestrian scale and.
So do you think that that's part of a grander narrative that really talks about not only the dollar investment, but would illustrate the willingness of the city to participate
Yes,
in order
I think
to
so.
create the
Yeah, for
success?
sure.
Yeah.
absolutely.
That sounds like a cover letter that goes with this.
Almost, I mean, it's
Yeah.
part of an introduction, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of the case for an update, basically. Yeah, absolutely, I love that idea.
I mean, I like that because this is what we give investors that we want to come downtown. This is what we've done, this is our master plan.
Yeah,
So,
here's where you fit into that. Excellent.
Well, I think, the time, we're talking about the city and things like that. College getting ready to put a bunch of money downtown.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's another thing that we're willing to say that, other people are involved in what's going on downtown,
Yeah,
so, and then the hospital's doing lots of things. So, I think it's, all that is, if it's just like, to investors, they're gonna look at and say, well, I'm gonna have to do this all on my own. No, you're not. The city's involved, the college's been involved, the hospital's doing things, and I think it's a lot easier for an investor to say, well, let me look at that part because there's other people who are involved in that process.
Yeah.
and just looking at the pictures, I mean, I see so many that are original, like it still shows Evans flooring
Yeah.
when it was there. It also shows when we were doing State of Downtown at Copper Rose. I think it should be changed.
Okay.
And I want current pictures, and we didn't have it last year, but we did the year before, and I bet we got pictures of it, and it was at the conference center.
Okay.
I just think, instead of showing pictures that are 5 years old, that should totally be updated.
Yeah, if you want to help identify the exact photos that you feel like are outdated, those are, most of the photos that we grabbed are either from past plans or they're from the DOI social media page, and, you know, I scrolled until I found a photo that I felt like, you know, had the right location and energy, but it absolutely could be that, you know, photos that I chose were outdated. So if you guys want to assist on helping kind of figure out a good replacement photo as well, that'd be huge help. I completely agree that they should be
That
up
one's
to date.
updated because the power lines are there.
So let's see, so we were on page 5 talking about the branding and marketing. Were there any other comments regarding?
I
these
would like to
recommendations?
figure out, and I've shown several people here my idea, that if we could partner with the businesses that don't have anything going on right now to wrap their windows and to use that branding, if we could, you know, figure out a version of this branding that, like on the Rio or the Piccadilly, I know I've shown you those pictures, Toby, you've seen
I
those.
love
as well.
it, yeah. I love
But
that.
just as a, to freshen it up, so it's not just plywood, painted plywood on there. I don't know what that looks like if we, you know, how, obviously we would have to pay for the wrap, but how to partner with the businesses
That
to
can't be
say.
that expensive though, I mean, for the bang for the buck, because
Yeah.
it does two things, it markets and it
It's-
also
that-
cleans up
Yeah,
unsightliness. Yeah, I love that.
Good idea.
Yeah.
so, and even on these construction pieces, like Icon has the plywood over their front right now. You know, we
Right.
could wrap that while they're
Have like a
working.
coming soon.
You know, like they
kind
do
of
at the
banner.
mall, where
Yeah.
they just cover it up, where it just looks nice.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I just thought that was a good,
So
And I
that's,
mean,
that's probably more of an action item specifically for,
TIRZ.
no,
DOI.
DOT, DOO. whatever.
DTO.
DTO, what is that acronym?
OCD.
But maybe that's part of the action item in the plan, but certainly when we look at implementation, that's gonna
Yes.
be a deal, I think, so,
Yeah.
yeah. I like it,
I guess, how does it get funded, so probably,
yeah.
Michael, with DOI, sometimes like some events are not happening the way it was, or as big or whatever, and extra money. And if money was issued for an event, can it be transferred over to advertising? Because that would be advertising for DOI.
Well, my guess is, John, is that if we're not advertising big events, that there may still be some monies in advertising, so, yeah.
Great.
And just so you guys know, and not to get off topic, because I know we want to focus on what we're doing today.
That's okay.
But we do have actually some branding dollars in the DOI budget.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay.
most of all my other comments just come on page 6 with just the rendering. If you don't mind, I guess I'm kind of, because when I went through that legend, it looked like the downtown influence area for one. You know, one of the things I was curious about is what the thought was of why where we stopped it at. I know like it's Progressive Park that's at, that's not in that area. And I guess what I always thought that the area being is hospital to hospital.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason,
Yeah, and I believe this boundary was reused from the old master plan, which is, where we got that boundary basically from. So if it needs to be updated, that's absolutely something that can be done here.
it's about a block either way. I mean, but I like it that we get another park in there, same thing for developers and
I know when we
everything.
show the park in there, so it's clearly on the mind of it's
Yeah.
downtown.
We're just
technically
literally
on the
one
other
block
side.
from encompassing
Right.
it.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
And,
But this is just an arbitrary border, because it's, the TIRZ boundary's bigger than this, and
Yeah.
the
But
DTO
But as a
boundary.
developer, to me, to see that park, and then I see a hospital and a hospital
Yeah.
anchoring either side of that to me, that's the only logic in my thinking.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, and when it comes to this framework plan, this is a bit more kind of zoomed in and detailed compared to what the original master plan put together, so it, you know, it could be that we just had to, like we said, it was kind of arbitrary, but we had to cut it off somewhere. Wanted to focus a little more on the core.
That's like over Muskingum the road, I was going to lease that part.
Yeah, Muskingum would be the stop, where I'd say stop at Muskingum, and then maybe Golder.
So Toby, do you think the influence area is just the downtown footprint? Because I'm assuming this will still have what we call the core area.
Yeah, the course there in the yellow, and I think that's fine. I just thought that, you know,
Yeah.
one step out, you know, and I'm, once again, looking at it as a developer, and I'm seeing, okay, you know, we're anchored between, I mean, two hospitals, and there's another park as well.
Yeah.
That would be only logic in my
What
mind.
was the other street bound? You said Muskie and then?
I think it'd be Golder. I mean, it's, right now, it looks like it's Washington, so that's a few more blocks.
Yeah.
Tex Tech goes to Dotsey.
So our border is
Or
from
Dotsey,
Dotsey
yeah, somewhere in
over
there.
to
Dotsey.
Adams to Bernice.
Adams,
Adams,
Bernice,
Okay.
second, and up to 8th or 10th? 10th, yeah.
10th is, are we switching to DTO? It's gonna be hard.
Yes, yeah. The
10th
different
is
boundaries.
DOI.
Yeah.
8th is TIRZ.
Okay.
Yeah, so 8th or 10th.
8th.
Hey, I mean, I like the way this is rendered, but other than that.
Yeah, it's a good sense. Okay,
The other part on this legend, the festival streets, going, I think it's page 11, we say 4th and 6th have been identified as locations. And, I mean, all I ever know that we've done is Texas. I mean, that may be new thinking, but I'm not, I just want to be sure. And it also seems like, you know, where we're talking about putting the pedestrian walkway area, if that along with Texas makes more sense if we were,
Well, and what I remember on the 4th and 6th, what we had talked about is that, yeah, it runs on Grant, but the two side streets where you would run power for food trucks, or you would do the things that would be the market, or what those extra things would be along 4th and 6th.
right.
Because I think they already are along 4th.
Yeah, Fourth is where you used to always have Fandango.
Yeah.
Fourth is, we have electrical up and down that also, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we've got the college doing the on Jackson.
Right. Jackson 4th.
Yeah, so,
So that's what I remember in the conversation about 4th and 6th.
Yes, you're right.
And that they get the raised walkways to slow traffic and whatnot.
Yeah.
I know behind the library, we have all the electrical behind the library and all that. That street has extra electrical.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the natural occurrence, what has happened now that the conference center is open, is that a lot of our focus where we did have festivals is now moving further east.
Mhm. See, previously, we did Fandango more up Fourth Street and where the hospital has built the Women's and Children's Center. That was our main stage area back that way, but now it's moved behind.
well, like the car show was Texas, the
Market.
market was, I mean, I just, you know, I just want to be sure, you know, well, that's, once again, this is perception, you know, perception becomes reality, so.
I think I agree with you, Toby. Again, there's a natural progression to that, and I think as we plan and we design and we improve those streets, we're just gonna have to modify them where we do have access to water, where we do have access to electrical. So we are able to have the sort of festivals we used to have on 4th Street. We're just gonna move it.
And, sorry, I didn't mean to.
And that way, I mean, we don't have to ask TxDOT anything to redo those curbings, to add electrical and other things. We can do those, correct?
Yeah, I mean, those are city roads, so,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
much
that way.
easier.
Yeah.
And so I remember on our walking tour, we walked along 4th and we talked about the food trucks and how that's all along there. Correct me if I'm wrong though, does that need kind of some sprucing up compared to what was originally put in? If it's not currently
Well,
functional?
the comment I heard was that they don't work.
That's,
The
yeah.
outlets don't work.
So from what I've heard, you know, 4th has that infrastructure, but there's still a project there basically to improve that. Okay, just making sure I have the right information. So we're about halfway through our time, and I don't want to go over. There's a lot to discuss in here. I don't mean to cut anyone off, but was there any kind of glaring action items or things that people, maybe wanted to make sure were discussed here versus things that, because at the end of this, I will ask if people can submit their comments so that we just have a record of everyone. I don't know if we have enough time today for everyone to speak every single comment that they had, but if there were discussion items that you felt like, the members in this room, you needed to hash out.
Monica, one, and Toby brought it up at our last meeting, and I think y'all probably have it down. But he was talking about, in this plan was the closure of Jackson.
Yes.
And he brought up the fact that there's
Yes.
businesses along there, and and I think his thought and mine is the same, is that you don't really close the street, you have
Yes.
it set up so that you can have bowlers or whatever it is that would, during certain events, close it,
Yes, sir.
but those businesses, I think that wouldn't have a problem with that, but
Yeah.
if you close that street, if I was on that street, I'd be very upset.
We're
So,
exactly on the same
yeah.
page. I think it was just a matter of phrasing within the report, so we'll make sure to update that and make it more clear, because that was also
Right.
our intention with the
And
recommendation.
then I know some comments that were in here that I think, even those businesses along there, we might be able to help them to establish some type of parking maybe behind their local business. Some things were suggested, so you might help them do things like that, so that, when the street is closed, they're still.
And of course, to have the businesses buy off on that concept
Right.
as well, because it would mean during events, some closure for them. So
Right.
making sure that
Yeah.
there's adequate access and that they are on board for that kind of feature.
Jumping over to page 11,
Yep.
parking.
Okay?
Y'all had a parking map at the strip,
Yes.
incorrect. Says open, always public, like Bushman's properties. After 5, we can use them, no problem. The city has a parking lot after 5 that's open, we can use them. But it showed different ones that were available that are private that you cannot use. And when we keep saying we have enough parking, we have enough parking, we have enough parking. Talk to not just the people eating lunch, talk to their staff that's walking 2 blocks or 3 blocks to get to a car. Or something happening at night where we're having some problems. There is a parking issue. When y'all say there's not, there is.
So I think you're absolutely right. So the map that we had at the charrette is from our, the transportation master plan, which was in 2018, I believe, when we did the parking component of that study. So it's absolutely possible that map is outdated now and that there are different inventories that are available. And also that demand has evolved and there are issues now that didn't exist, 3 years ago.
That's why, I truly think that needs to be in here also, because developers, I hear that all the time. Well, you want housing, where are people gonna park? You want this, where are people gonna do this? I would like the parking map to be in here that says, yes, we have it. And during a festival, if you've gotta walk 2 or 3 blocks, you do.
So I think I agree with that. And if I recall from when we did the 2018 parking study, it wasn't that we had parking, John, is that parking could be available. And it was caveated between what was publicly available and what was privately held. And I think there was a lot of discussion about, in order to access more parking, there would have to be work on the city's part to enter into cooperative parking agreements, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, because just the 4th and Grant area, and I mean, I'm not a restaurant owner downtown anymore, but still, help them. We have 4 new ones opening in the next year. I mean, and we say, yes, there's parking at the Marriott. There's public parking. 2.5 blocks away, or a block and a half away, hopefully they will park that away, I hope. I like our new signs that we put up. We've got some wayfinding signs going.
Good.
I was in Denton, their wayfind signs were
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah, we were talking about that last board.
But I think the parking needs to be an issue, because when I speak to people, to different investors and different ones and developers, they mention parking a lot.
Yeah, and so you brought the residential factor of that, and that's actually something, so, Philip mentioned at the beginning, we did get city comments that have yet to be addressed in the draft that you guys received, but we are working on it. We do actually have a partner in our Dallas office who we discussed, there was discussion with the city on more concrete action items regarding the residential strategy, since that's so important. And one of the, this is new information probably to Philip and the team, but one of the pieces of advice that she gave us when we had the discussion about that residential strategy was to basically eliminate parking requirements on those residentials, whether it's minimums or maximums, with it being in a downtown and special case. And so basically allowing developers to park their development however they want, if it's residential, since that is a more unique aspect of, and usually a barrier to development is people feeling like they, aren't gonna have enough room or having, too high requirements. So that is something that we're planning to address in the residential strategy as well, but we do have a separate parking strategy, that it could be mentioned in as well, so.
You can eliminate it, but the lenders won't eliminate it.
Mhm.
The lenders are gonna require, we're going through that right now, they're gonna require 1-for-1, period.
And essentially, it already is eliminated. You're talking about Business District 1 zoning, which doesn't have any prescriptive parking requirements as it is today. So,
But residential, if they get you a lender,
yeah, I agree with
Well,
Doug.
everybody's gonna go through a lender, I mean,
Yeah.
on a 200-unit deal, it's gonna go through a lender. But,
Yeah.
so the things that we're looking at is either going down
Mhm.
and under parking or over parking, going up. One of the two, you gotta go on top or underneath.
Yeah, which neither of those are cheap to do.
No, neither are two.
Okay.
Yeah, I know we need to expedite things, but I don't want to monopolize this, but the rendering still, to me,
On
some
page
things.
5 or 6?
Yes, 6, because like we've got Prosperity Bank that's going in at, Texas, and 6, and that shows mixed use, where we already know what it's gonna be. It's already plotted and drawn, so I mean, I would think we'd update that as well. And then jumping and then this is one of the things I mentioned in the last meeting, if you go several places, or one other place, I think, but like on page 15, where Torchy's is, we've rendered that as restaurants, and there's a building there, could be Torchy's, but everything else, well, 3/4 of that block's all already parking. So we're rendering, I mean, there's no reason in my mind not just to update, I mean, we've got the plat of that block, exactly what it looks like. I think we should just use it.
So are you saying that there's future development that's been rendered, or?
It's already done.
We need to
there will-
render it
There
as
will be no,
it is.
yes, it is, because that's finished out, and that's back to John's point, from a developer's aspect, that's finished, I mean, it doesn't look like this either, by the way. And then the same thing where the bank's going, that will have been completed. So from one plan to the next, it's like, okay, this is what it looks like, but there's no other opportunity for a developer there, in my point. And so you wouldn't want them to see that as opportunity, it's done.
Okay. Okay,
Has anybody looked at outdoor restrooms for this downtown area?
OC's gonna have them.
They are gonna have them in their buildings?
Question again on the restrooms, which I think we need some. I mean, when we do festivals, we put porta potties.
That was my question.
When we do, every festival we have several porta potties. But also, we have a problem with homeless people downtown.
We,
And-
we close our bathrooms at the parks, because there's crime,
Yeah,
drugs, anything that happens in there.
So you had to close it.
that's the thing with
Yeah, they were-
restrooms.
Yeah.
They're hard
I
to.
think they've been open since the
The girls were
70s.
taking guys in there.
Oh,
Yeah, but during festivals,
But
all
during
the restaurants, everybody's not going, people just come and use restrooms,
But
not
during-
use the restaurant.
all festivals,
Right.
we have porta potties put in different areas depending on how big the event's gonna be and how many we're gonna do, and put them in different areas, but we do that during that time.
All right.
And that's what Smithland's doing too, and I mean, they're
I don't think you can
Literally
do
putting
anything different.
100 downtown.
Just porta potties?
Yeah, they're I mean, I think they knew where they were gonna put them though. That's one thing we might think about, because it looks to me like they set that back to where they could put them all in a row and just, it's not, it looks thought out, I guess, what I'm saying.
so just to be clear, is there a change here, or is this just, we wanna make sure that we're on the same page for that?
So the only thing I see with that is that I see where we have the OA, I mean, the
OC.
OC project, and then the potential library. Now, across the street from the OC project, where you have that white building, yeah? So right now, I think in terms of, if we're talking about what's going there, that, at least for the current timeframe, will be a parking.
Yes. And I believe we discussed that as this is gonna be developed into it's basically being kind of like flattened parking, but
For now.
then,
It
yeah,
could
for
be something
now.
else in the
But,
future.
yeah, so I think when it comes to, these building renderings, it might be worthwhile for us to add a disclaimer that, this is basically a visionary, doesn't mean that it's slated for development, but it's, a 20 to 30-year horizon of what this could develop into eventually. If you guys feel like you're comfortable basically proposing that eventually being redeveloped outside of parking, or if you feel more comfortable, we could show it as a parking lot, but, it could go either way.
I think it's fine the way it is, because I think we're all with that understanding that this is something that will evolve over time.
I'll add a note, though, to be clear, that this doesn't mean that it's slated to be this footprint of a building, that
Sure.
it's a visionary.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed if the right thing comes in later, but right now, it is slated for parking.
Mhm.
If it were gonna be rendered, I don't know why we wouldn't render it as parking.
I think it's just to show the potential, like, for the future. Because we do also showing some of these alleys are developing into, there's parking being added into the center of these blocks that doesn't exist today. The idea, if it were to redevelop, there would need to be added parking elsewhere to make up for that,
Well,
obviously.
Well, though, to the point, though, if I'm a developer and we've got restaurants that are all, they're rendered to be on Texas, they're gonna be saying, okay, well, where are my customers parking?
Mhm.
And that's the lot, I mean, then we've also got,
But even
That's
behind them
valid.
off of Texas, they show parking lots, on either side. In the alley space.
yeah,
So as it exists now, I see what you're talking about. But as a vision,
yeah, once again, I own property on that street, and, originally we said it was gonna be parking, it was slated as parking, I think there were even funds set aside for that to be parking, and the intent is when OC does their project, is for that to be parking. Therefore, why not render it as parking?
I think that's a discussion for the TIRZ, on the future of that.
Well, I mean, the rendering is either a building or parking.
Correct.
And we know we're gonna do parking, so my question is, why do we render a building there when we know it's gonna be parking? And if you wanna do a plan 5 years from now, that says, hey, it's gonna be a building, that might be different, but
Yeah,
I would feel differently about it as a developer, knowing that's parking, if I were gonna develop one of those buildings on Texas.
What does the board think about that?
Again, in terms of where we're at, where we're headed today, and what we've planned, that will be a parking area
Yeah,
today.
then we'll change it to parking.
I think it'd make a lot of people feel better.
And I know where the United States Post Office is, we put parking structure there. To decommission that and even get them to move, that's not gonna happen in 5 years, correct?
I don't know if that's a 5-year goal.
Yeah.
Do we list it as a 5-year goal? Because that needs to be changed.
Well, it won't be 5 years.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you know what? I think it should still say post office because it's not gonna be parking within 5 years. And I don't wanna tell a developer, hey, that's gonna be parking. And they're like, when? Oh, hopefully 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, when I first saw that, I'm like, that's gonna be a while.
They could say today they want to get rid of that building, I tell you, it'd be at least 5 years.
You know,
If they said it today, so it's not gonna, you look at it.
So I think that brings up a good conversation, which is when it comes to kind of this framework plan and the footprint for the arts and entertainment district, I think the idea for the actual plan was a long-term vision versus the medium term is what we can call it, the 5 to 10-ish years. what things are gonna look like. There's definitely an intermediate stage of how things would develop. And, you know, obviously with the idea of the post office being an extremely long-term. You know, one of the, just kind of generally in planning, I think one of the things that we like to start at is that more lofty, long-term, and then if we need to be real back in, we can. But, you know, if we plant the seeds for a redevelopment like that now, and then in the future, you know, long-term may be, that is just, you know, setting the groundwork for a larger scale idea versus only wanting to reach for the low-hanging fruit. There's two different approaches, I guess is what I'm saying. So this framework plan itself takes more of a long-term approach, but I don't want to also discourage any development that could help bring this along in the future. So if that's something that we want to take out of this plan, then it you know, can absolutely be taken out. You know, with it possibly being a future action item that is long-term, maybe that's the compromise here.
Well, I think in the plan, we need to put in the plan what is happening now in the next 4 or 5 years. And then we might have footnotes, as I'm saying, you know, this particular area, long-term could be this or that or whatever. But to render, like Toby said, to render what's actually there is what, that's what, you know, you're gonna go to investors and people like that to say, this is what we have right now. You know, now, if you're looking 15, 20 years from now, this area here might be something you wanna look at, but right now, this is what our plan is.
Yeah, absolutely, we can change that. All right, we have about 10 minutes left in our slated time. If anybody is available to stay after, I don't have anywhere to be, so I'm welcome to stay if anyone has anything else they want to talk through. But while we have everyone else, does anybody have any other discussion points they wanted to touch on?
I'll ask Phil up really quickly to go over specifically what, as staff, we asked you to look, to update on the plan.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Monroe, we did have our conversations and reference in the plan, specifically as related to housing strategies. As Monica said, we were looking for, of course, meeting those housing downtown, but the strategies for that. So I think that's going to be addressed. As it relates to parking, John, we did talk with Hal, and he's working with Jeff on updating what parking has been done downtown as far as angled-in parking, what's still parallel parking, when other parking lots have been updated, have been sold. So I think that's a component that's been associated. There was discussions about the walkability for downtown, what size sidewalks we want to plan for downtown. Do we want to have a standard for that? What type of landscaping, things of that nature. We want a standard as staff to be able to look towards and plan towards. And that way we don't have one development go up on 4th Street and they put in this type of tree, this type of sidewalk, and then something in on 6th Street that's different. We want a standard for downtown. One thing I failed to mention on the parking, we know that we've had the conversation with the board, is that we have antiquated equipment for parking meters downtown. And we've talked to a couple of vendors for digital parking, whether it's paying for parking on your phone or something that'll take credit cards, that when we turn over parking, we don't just have the same parking being utilized downtown. So that was a component that's going to be looked at as zoned parking, and then being able to pay for parking in different ways besides change there. Again, we looked at our parks footprint, our green space footprint, and we did visit with our park staff, and they had suggestions for the planning and uses for Knoll Plaza. Again, that's a park that we've talked to Mr. Murrow about, has been around for quite a while, and does our programming need to be revitalized there. We have a lot of as we discussed, homeless issues that take place in that park and other parks, and something that we've discussed with Kimberly Horn is not necessarily mapping out that we have homeless issues within the plan, because I think that'll deter developers and those interested in investing downtown. But having a statement within the plan to improve security downtown, lighting, things of that nature, and within those green spaces that we have, making them more visible. I think right now Mill Plaza within the plan, it was discussed as having views being blocked by the library and some of the other developments, so it's making things more open, more visible, so we don't have those type of issues coming together there. There was a lot of discussion that we had with Kimberly Horn about Grant Street. I think we definitely wanted a direction for Grant, and of course that's a state-owned highway as we've discussed, but what do we do moving forward as far as a standard, again, for lighting, landscaping, future sidewalk development. Mr. Monroe has let the board know that we have funds through a certificate of obligation for revitalization of downtown, and I think Grant would be one of our spots that we would definitely look at improving. And so a component of Grant would be whether we keep that on-street parking or not, and if we don't keep on-street parking, where would we offer available parking elsewhere. So those are the main items that we discussed with Kimberly Horn at this point.
How did y'all feel about the lighting in downtown?
Like on the walking tour and everything?
At night.
Well, so we didn't walk around a lot at nighttime, so I can't say that I have a strong opinion on how it can be improved. I think there has been improvements to it in recent history. I don't have a problem with recommending future improvements as well. How do you feel about it?
It's too dark.
It is too dark. Also, another thing is, we had 4 nights in a row we did not have lights on Grant. And I texted Hal and I said, hey, did you know the lights are out? And he said, yes, sir, I did. I've already called Encore. And
So
like 4 days later. Do
So-
they always respond that slow to y'all?
Typically, yeah.
I mean, but Hal was like, when I said something, and I mean, sometimes with parks or other, I'll say, did you know you got a broken something or this or that? And they're on it, sometimes they don't know that, but Hal was like, we're on it, and it takes this long with Encore to do it.
It does, yeah.
So I think
So,
that's.
to your point, John, we, for example, if we take the area around the hotel, all of that lighting is new, and that really was kind of one of the key components when we looked at that development, because we knew security would be kind of the driver for a lot of people wanting to go downtown. We actually have a promulgation map of lighting that we would use as we kind of develop certain areas. Let's say, for example, Grant Street. Obviously, there's a photometric analysis that would be included in that. So we'll know exactly where to put lights and how many. Beyond that, to your point of it being dark, when we started, I don't know if you recall this, Toby, we had our police department do a risk analysis for us. So they took and they looked at all the areas that were, if you had lighting, you know, how good was it? Secondly, where you didn't have lighting, where you needed it, where there were bushes that needed to be taken out, where trees needed to be trimmed. All of those things will play a role as we kind of design Grant Street, 4th Street, whatever that is. We'll take all of those things into consideration.
Also, like, all the trees that are on Grant that are dropping little acorns right now.
Yeah.
I mentioned to someone that I've done some research. That's a trip hazard right now, that it's pretty rough. You can sterilize the tree, that is the way it makes fruit, and not harm that tree, still grow where it no longer drops the acorns.
Yeah, but those trees need to be, I mean, they just look terrible.
Talk about my trees?
Okay.
Huh?
Talk about my trees at the courthouse?
No,
No, no,
I'm,
no.
I'm talking if, like,
Well, yours too.
in front of your building, or
Those
the
grape trees.
Copper Rose, I mean,
Copper
that
Oak.
tree needs to be trimmed so badly
They need to
that,
be trimmed. I'm not saying remove them, I want the green, they need to be trimmed. And right now, the city has had, I guess, probably not enough staff to do it, that they're trying to get a contract with an arborist or something to get this taken care of.
And I believe that's gonna be one of the components that we wanna address within this plan as well, is that standardization of
Right.
the landscaping. I can tell you our parks comments that we received was that we need new trees, that some of those trees have reached their life expectancy. Some of those are dropping acorns, or it may be, and there's other options for trees that won't interfere with the businesses, bring up the sidewalks like they have in certain areas where they do provide that green aspect, but they don't grow as tall, things of that nature.
And those, I think we can trim a lot of those up also high enough so you're not blocking the business's signs and other things.
Yeah.
They just need a massive haircut.
Yeah.
A haircut and sterilizing would be awesome.
Yeah,
That'd be a
because you
big-
can sterilize them where they no longer drop
Well,
this.
and that's gotta be cost savings in the long run.
Mhm.
All you do is pour it onto the tree and it's done.
Mhm. Yeah,
Awesome.
and that way again, I mean, when we're moving forward downtown, I'm just saying, we don't want this tree because of this, and this, and what we want roots to grow down, not up for sidewalks and. On our minimum building standards, wouldn't that cover the plywood, the this, the that, the broken windows and other things?
As part of the minimum building standards, it's required that a business, if they have broken windows that are at the front facing of the business, and I have to get the full details of the minimum building standards in front of me, but that's what's triggering the plywood being put up. It's not just broken windows that are out. And I believe it has to be a painted plywood that is put up.
Can't we change that to where it's wrapped? With our stuff?
You know, when we proposed the minimum property standard, we talked about if you had a glass window, you had to replace it with a glass. But I think there was a lot of pushback from property owners that didn't want to have to go through that expense, only to have someone else break it
Right.
again. So,
That's.
Just on the plywood.
yeah.
And that's one thing they said they did in Denton, that like during that, if your building is in horrible shape, you need to be in the process of repairing, or it needs to be for sale at market value, not just because Toby didn't want to fix it, and he's like, okay, list it, John, for $5 million. No, and they really pushed down there, their city council did, and they said at first, they pissed some people off. But it's looking really good. And I think we may have to do a few more things like that.
Is that something we want to add into recommendation?
I think stricter enforcement is gonna be needed in the future.
I think so also, but then again, XYZ's like, I wanna paint mine purple, there's nothing you can do about it, and I'm gonna do this. City says you can't, now we have a lawsuit. And Big Bully City is picking on us, and that's our color everywhere. I mean, it does say no, I believe fluorescent colors, but we're not real picky on that.
Or yeah, what's the enforcement on that as
Right.
well?
So maybe there's mention of the city needing to revisit the minimum property standards.
Mhm.
I mean, you do that through public comment, that sort of thing, because you've
Yeah.
got affected property owners, you got people that don't like the colors, that really is a process in itself.
And who enforces that, Michael,
That would be the building inspection department.
for minimum building standards?
Yes, sir.
Not code enforcement?
Not code enforcement.
Well, we are at time. I know if anybody has somewhere they need to be in the next few minutes, feel free to. But like I said, I will stick around if we want to continue discussion. There's a lot in this plan, so if you guys have other things you want to discuss, I'm willing to do that.
I mean, I really like the way that we have some of the festivals in there. Maybe some more pictures on Grant to help showing Fandango and some other things we've done, where it shows hundreds, thousands of people. Because this is just truly a key to get my developers, my investors, and people to invest in our downtown to move forward. It's kind of like my sales brochure. And I was one of them that did want it, because when I gave it to people, they're like, that's 5, 6 years old. No, not doing a new one. We're working on it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
On the minimum building standards, are you guys considering like glass fronts as a minimum? Instead of an enclosed building with a door that someone may not know what's behind?
So the minimum property standards, building standard looks at several different aspects. Not only is the glass, is there chipping paint, is there rotted wood, all of those things that contribute to the aesthetic of the building. Now, what we've gone, and we call it a minimum, so what we're doing at a minimum, if you have a broken window, then you've got to board it up.
Sure.
You know, if you've got a facade that's falling, you've got to take it down and put it back up. or take it down where it's no longer a danger.
And maybe I'm not talking about existing buildings, but I'm talking about new businesses maybe coming in or a new building going up. I mean, in my opinion, you would want people that walk the streets to be able to see what's represented inside that building. It creates a destination, right, as opposed to,
They don't require you have to have 50% glass or so and so and so. That's not in,
That's a building code issue, not necessarily minimum property standard.
but like, the minimum building standards, one of them I've got two problems with, and they've been issued, and it is the old Piccadilly. Upstairs windows broke again, or came out, thousands of pigeons, again. Next door to it, the old Rio Theater. Walk under that sidewalk, thousands of pigeons, the whole sidewalk's full of pigeon remains. Those are two that are pretty rough. When the Rio was sold, people that bought it was gonna put a bed and breakfast in an art studio. Seen nothing happen. The other one is for sale, but they want probably 450,000, 500,000, and it will cost minimal of $1 million to get it up to code. I'm just putting business in
Yeah,
to do that. But when Michael, I believe Michael's the one that called and asked them, can you at least paint the plywood and do this a couple months ago? And they did do that. It does look a lot better than it did.
Mr. Harrington, to your question as well, we do have an overlay zone for downtown, and as part of the facade grants that we mentioned downtown, if anyone receives our facade grant funding, they do have to meet that overlay standard, so they have to have the typical downtown look of the awning, they have to have so much, whether it's brick or stone, stucco on the building, and then windows are an aspect of that as well, but those are enforced on individuals that are receiving the city's money for that program.
Is there a requirement as to how long it has to stay that way?
I
So
don't
like
have
you,
the answer to that,
you
but I
put
can-
money into the French press and
Okay.
now it's got AstroTurf on the side.
Well, the way that works also, that used to, when they did the French press,
I was still painted green, I don't know.
it's the AstroTurf is gone.
Yeah.
When they did the French press, that didn't happen, and the exhaust fan and everything was moved. Now it's kind of a forgiven grant. If you sell or change it within the first year, you pay back, I think, 100%, then 75, 50, and 25.
Yeah, but the same guy owns the building. He's just leasing the space out to a tenant, and they made the changes.
Right,
Like, I don't think it's something that's happening a whole awful lot, but
but now it is current where I own the building, he's leasing it, I am responsible for it. If he leaves, I'm still responsible. So
but for
there's
how
some
long?
changes.
Can we make sure somebody keeps it for 10 years?
I think 10 years is gonna be hard. Because again, on the restrictions you put, that I'm getting a lender involved, a lender is gonna go, no. I'm not gonna be involved in that with 10 years. 5, maybe.
So were you explaining earlier that it's almost like kind of a 4-year deal with it basically,
That you're forgiven.
yeah.
Isn't it 4 years? If you sell
It's kind of-
or
it
change it
steps
within the
down.
first year, 100% in 75, 25, 50. And that just did happen with Proteus. Proteus got a roof a couple of years ago and was grant money, and they did sell their building, so they did have to pay that grant money back.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you all next week.
going back to parking on the southeast and southwest corner of Second Street and Grant, is that city-owned?
No.
Is that private?
Second grant, where the Boy Scout place is?
On the
It's
south
not-
side.
Across the
South
street,
side.
like where they used to do the farmer's market.
That the city does own that.
City
So the
does
city
own
does own it. And then I saw in here where there was recommendations to maybe make the Scout building downtown Odessa
Like a welcome center.
welcome center.
Yes.
Be incredible to do that.
And who owns that building currently?
The county owns that. Judge was there that day talking about it. And they lease it to the Boy Scouts. They only use it for storage. She does have other storage available that she could give them at no charge if they were okay with it. And it could be a welcome center, DOI, I don't know, Discover Odessa. It could be. Yeah.
Well,
So
you
this-
could have
That was one of the
multiple-
great ideas that came out of the last day of the charrette, that Grant Avenue
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, they didn't want to give it up, but they're not using it at all. I mean, it's designed like you go in as a retail store, you know, I mean, to buy Boy Scout supplies, but
Right.
it's totally been unutilized for years.
They use it for
But
storage.
then you ask them and they don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
Do they have a lease?
It's $1 a year.
How
Yeah,
long's
that's
their
right.
lease?
That I don't know. I haven't seen the lease.
So one thing, just one piece of homework that I'd like to give you guys, if you don't mind, is any other comments that you guys have that you want to make sure get seen by us or the city, if you can just send those in any way to Philip, and then he can relay those to us and compile them together, just to make sure that we have a record of anything that you guys had concerns about or wanted to see changed. I've got a lot of great notes from our discussion here, so thank you guys again for your time today. I know there's, again, a lot to this plan, so my feelings are not hurt if there's something we didn't discuss and you want us to change.
And as it gets closer
Yes.
to where we get finalized, can we set up a discussion? Because I know like Odessa Arts is named in here, DOI is named in here. Can we set up a discussion with those entities so that, again, we're all on the same page and we're not perceived as.
Did we have discussions with those group in the development of the plan?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I know the Arts attended the meeting, Alexa was at many of the meetings, of course, Mr. Harrod was at many of those meetings, but we can definitely find a way to
But just so that it's not perceived as, okay, here's what you're
Right.
doing.
Craig, is that a discussion or a copy of the plan saying, check to make sure we've referenced your information correctly?
Well, I think some of the data in here is for them to do, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the TIRZ board, so.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, what we discussed also at the last meeting, and then of course this wouldn't relate to the arts group, but I think we've got a good enough partnership that we can share this with them, that as it relates to DOI or parks, that was one of the items that, will this plan not only be adopted by the TIRZ board, but we will take it to the council for adoption as well. And with the council then adopting it, that becomes the plan for the city staff and the departments to start executing and moving forward towards as well.
But like, there's action items in here for Odessa Arts, so I think they should have. a
And we
voice
need to
in-
know what they're gonna be doing,
Yeah.
what their plans are too.
Yeah, Odessa Arts did come to the charrette, so we got a lot of really good information about their current programs and what they have in the works, so. Hopefully those are reflected in the plan as it currently stands, but I completely agree that it should definitely be sent to them so they can review and make sure
Yeah.
everything's cited correctly and
At
that
the very
they're on
least.
board with everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Shelby, have they painted the mural at the hotel?
No.
No?
Not yet.
Have they done any of them yet? Any murals yet?
I believe they were, one of the things they've talked to me about was having trouble finding artists who.
One of the hotels been picked, and I think there's
There's one
three
already.
others that are.
Okay.
There's one picked already for the,
Yeah.
for the.
But none of them
garage.
done. Because I would love to do that with Odessa Arts, look, blank wall, bang, look where this came in and different
Yeah.
things.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good before and after.
No, no.
Do y'all have an understanding of how much office and medical is downtown now and how much is restaurant service?
The existing land use?
Yes.
I believe we do, yeah.
And when a downtown becomes a destination, what is the percentage of restaurants and retail and whatnot?
That's a good
That needs to
question.
be there
Yeah,
for people not to walk out of the hotel and say, okay, well, I got a doctor's office, and I got a lawyer's office, and I got Torchy's Tacos. What do we
basically the
wanna do
balance
with
of
that?
uses, basically. Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I don't know if I could give you exact numbers right now. I think it's a case-by-case basis on different downtown areas. I think on top of the distribution of land uses, there's also the discussion of, walkability and general aesthetics and facades. If people want to walk out of their hotel room and get on the street and walk around and they find that a comfortable environment, I think that's also something that
Of
goes
course,
into
yeah.
it. But I do think, it's definitely something that was discussed in the charrette was the percentage of, office versus retail and whether or not there's an adequate amount of, there's like restaurants and retail were the top two, I think, main things. When we did the priority pyramid exercise, people want to see more of that. So I think in terms of talking about it for Odessa, there's definitely a want for more restaurants and retail, and people say that if there was more, it would attract them more into downtown. So I think as far as trends go in the future, that's where we're leaning our recommendations forward.
Another question I have, and I don't know if it's easy to determine, but how much in downtown Odessa is theoretically vacated after 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
That's also a good question.
Because, you know, I mean,
There's
doctor's
quite a bit.
offices, lawyer's offices, banks, all those people are gone. You know, so, you know, if you tell a business come in and say, well, you know, after 5 o'clock, there's still 35% of the people are still, activity's still going on. You know, whether it's bars, restaurants,
Yeah.
there's not any theaters, but I mean, you know, those type of things.
When I had the restaurant Monday, Tuesday, Monday was really slow, Tuesday got better, and then it progressed after 5 evenings. Our lunch was about the same all the time, we did quite well.
Right.
But Monday, Tuesday was slower. And I think part of that also is marketing, you know, so much more marketing saying, hey, when you get off at 5, happy hour, come see us to work on it also. And I think as we get more bars and restaurants, that will happen. Question, and back to his answer, or his question, other cities you've done, I don't know, say Denton, whatever, similar to our size,
Yes.
has approximately 20% restaurant, 20% retail, this much office and this much entertainment. So I think that would be great for us to know, what do we need to push for? Do we need to push for housing? Do we need to push more for retail? Do we need to change our grants? So it's not for this, this, and this, it's for this, this, and this?
Kind of like, almost like a market study in a way.
I mean, I wish it was something like that where we knew directions of a roadmap, like we,
Well, that's why I thought this was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's-
And so it just needs to be put in here.
Yeah. Where they said you need a bicycle shop, a candy shop, and a bookstore to be successful downtown. I keep hearing that.
Ice cream store.
The ice cream store,
More ice
candy
cream's
shop is
coming.
coming, the bookstore
Ice
we
cream is
have.
coming.
And I think, Monica, that's gonna be a component of the surveys that we did
But
online,
yeah,
where
I-
they
it's-
asked
it's-
for what's missing, you know, retail, whatever it may be.
So
and that-
those will be more in there.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
Right, we'll
okay.
need to highlight those.
Then that is something that we discussed with the city on being more specific about specifically those actions. I think as far as examining other cities, case studies are always useful. I think we have a really robust amount of public input as well that I think might honestly be a bit more useful in terms of shaping the recommendations, because only Odessa residents are going to, I think, you know, we will get visitors obviously outside from the city that have expectations on what a downtown could have that would attract them, but I think residents have the best idea of, well, I would really love to see this, I'd love to see that, and, you know the city better and have maybe more meaningful recommendations than maybe residents in Denton would have for their own downtown. Does that make sense? Kind of two separate markets. There are similarities, and there is definitely, I think, it's useful to examine other cities, but I think in terms of what we're planning to do with the future of this plan is more working with the current residents' comments, and we got hundreds and hundreds of responses.
We've discussed 2 or 3 times about a downtown business association.
Yes.
We're not trying to take away from the chamber or this or that, we're not. But, and which helps, we already have some current businesses that work well together. They come, when I owned a restaurant, they'd come and want a certain thing. We don't have that. But have you been to the Marriott? No, they have that. And we had some Marriott menus. Same thing with them. They're looking for this. Well, we don't carry that. And they would send people to us.
Yeah.
We
More
would work
communication.
together,
Yeah.
which was great. So,
More of that,
getting more businesses to work together downtown to support each other to bring people down here.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Great discussion, you guys. Thanks again for your time
Thank
today.
you.
Johnny, you get rid of all your.
You want to buy them?
No.
You got 5 left, buy 4, get 1 free.
Motion.
Mickey.
Do a second.
Second, vote, aye.
Do I see who's gonna second it?
Come on.
Nobody wants to